Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock news and politics show. 3 o'clock, Ava Gaudet with all things lifestyle and entertainment. Happy to be having our regular Tuesday 4 o'clock guest, but she is not inside the Beltway today. Jennifer Lawless, the director of the Women in Politics Institute at American University, joining us from University of Virginia?
Yes.
And I'm assuming... I'm assuming that you're there for work, yes?
Yes.
But keeping an eye on what's going on inside the Beltway, let's kick off the ban and subpoena.
I mean, this is bad news for the Trump administration. This is bad news for Donald Trump. We already saw that Steve Bannon has a propensity to be willing to talk. The Fire and Fury book and Michael Wolff's comments make that clear. We can only imagine what he might say under oath. And it's hard to imagine anybody who had closer proximity, not only to Donald Trump, but also to Jared Kushner and the other key players on the campaign. Now, we don't know exactly what he'll say, but this suggests that Mueller is very, very serious about this investigation, is moving very, very close to the president. And I mean, I can't imagine that this is a good day for the White House or for Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
And we found out today, yes, and actually he was subpoenaed last week. How was the best kept secret kept so tight?
Well, I think part of it has to do with the constant flurry of other news coming out of the White House and other problems and fish that they have to fry. And the meeting, for example, with Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin last week clearly sucked the energy out of all other coverage. The one other thing that we have learned pretty clearly from Mueller's investigation is that nothing seems to get out about that investigation until Bob Mueller wants it out. So, which frankly, I think should give the American people and members of Congress quite a bit of confidence, because you're right. I mean, how is this secret kept? My bet is in large part it has to do with how that overall investigation is generally being run.
And I'm assuming not a surprise to see Bannon subpoenaed. There's questions obviously as to who was next, but no one's head's really turned by this.
No, I mean, there was no question. I mean, I think the big question is ultimately what arrangements will Donald Trump make when he speaks to the committee, and will he ultimately need to be subpoenaed because he's not going to be willing to cooperate or talk to them under circumstances that they find acceptable. But this is not a surprise. The timing of it, though, does indicate, or at least allows us to read a little bit more into the tea leaves of how close we are to Donald Trump.
So all eyes on Mueller, but of course the continuation, we talked about the legs that the Fire and the Fury had. The shithole comments continue to have legs. And as you know, many news sites do or don't say it, we have here. But we just saw again that the director of Homeland Security today say, I believe, he didn't say it. Is it just along party lines, anyone who was in that meeting, whether he did or actually didn't say it? Is there any real doubt that he actually made those comments at this point still?
I mean, well, my understanding is that the debate now is shithole versus shithouse. So the people denying whether Donald Trump actually said shithole are not saying that the sentiment of those comments was untrue. They're not saying that the overall remarks were not given. They're just saying that he used the phrase house instead of hole. Now, this says several things. First, it suggests that the American political discourse has reached an all-time low. Second, it demonstrates that there really doesn't seem to be much debate over what Donald Trump's view on immigration is and the extent to which he's willing to be explicitly offensive about it. The question is just now, and the party line is over the use of one word versus the other. Nobody is questioning whether he actually said that it would be nicer to have more immigration from Norway. Nobody is questioning whether he suggested that people are coming from countries that he certainly would never live in. And in a lot of ways, those are the two more offensive parts of the overall remark. We're focused on the expletive because it's kind of stunning and unpresidential. But the substance underlying that expletive, I think, should be even more concerning.
And what do you say to his explanation that had come out soon thereafter, the comments themselves that came out? I believe he tried to walk back Haiti, but walk forward Africa. What did you make of his response to it all?
I think he doesn't know. I don't think he knows what he wants to do, right? If we believe the rumors, right after he made those comments, he called a lot of his supporters and he called a lot of his sort of, kitchen cabinet people to brag about the extent to which he was willing to, have such a hard line. When the pushback started coming, I think at that point, especially given that, President Clinton and President George W. Bush reminded him that there was a disaster in Haiti, and the United States played a very key and important role helping them rebuild, and we generally value that, that he then realized, oh, wait, maybe that's not exactly what I should have said, or maybe that's a bad example. But it's all part of this same general sense that he's anti-immigrant. And in a lot of ways, he's far more anti-immigrant than the Republican Congress that he's dealing with. And we've seen that especially from senators like Lindsey Graham, who for a decade now have been trying to get an immigration deal done.
And I think the most recent comments we saw from the president, again, trying to walk back the comments in their entirety, was saying that he welcomes all immigrants from everywhere. But can you really make good on comments that were made of that ilk and try to put forth turn over a new leaf?
No, I mean, this is the same man who said that I'm the least racist person you've ever met. Well, unless these people are spending all of their time with other card-carrying racists, that cannot be true. And I think that Donald Trump is beginning to learn. This is one of the first times Charlottesville over the summer lasted about this long as well. But it seems that when a statement is explicitly racist or explicitly xenophobic, it is far more offensive than when he just says something that suggests that he doesn't understand how the process works, or he just name calls a political opponent. And unfortunately, I think that it's terrible that this happened over the Martin Luther King Day weekend. But on top of that, it really highlights that the president learned virtually nothing from his response to Charlottesville over the summer. And so, one time maybe people will be willing to forgive him. We're now up to far beyond 2 times, but 2 very high profile episodes. It makes it a lot harder to believe his statements when he tries to backtrack.
And speaking of immigration, let's talk about Dreamers' deadline this Friday for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Again, still hanging in the balance. Do you think that they'll reach something?
I mean, the issue is, to what extent is a government shutdown worth not reaching something? And I don't know. I mean, a week ago, I would have said, yes, they'll figure something out. Even 5 days ago, I would have said yes. As of this morning, I mean, you've got Democrats that are digging in their heels saying it's unfortunate. There's no reason to close down the government, but they'll do it if they can't get a DACA resolution. And you've got a president saying, I want $100 million for a wall. Not $100 million, but he wants a lot, right? The other thing that's important to keep in mind here is that the Republicans lose and Donald Trump lose if the government shuts down. We don't have to look back beyond 2013 to see who takes the blame. And so, it's not the worst thing in the world for the Democrats, but it is the worst thing in the world for the American people, many of whom are not going to be able to rely on services that they have come to expect and, frankly, pay taxes to get from the federal government.
So all eyes on that January 19th deadline. But let's tack a little bit. You've been in the press, as you often are, talking about members of Congress, female members of Congress, wearing black to the State of the State. State of the Union. Oh, it's on the brain. State of the State here. State of the Union.
Black's always on the brain. I wear black all the time. So we saw at the Golden Globes that a lot of women at the Golden Globe Awards wore black to indicate their support for the Me Too movement and to highlight how terrible the status of women is in the media industry, and especially in Hollywood, regarding not only sexual harassment, but also equal pay. And I think the lesson learned from that was it garnered a lot of attention. And this is not the first time that at the State of the Union address, color has sort of been used. Last year, a lot of the Democratic women wore white sort of to highlight the suffragettes and the Hillary Clinton's loss. I think this time they're wearing black to indicate that this is a pretty somber moment for women, not only women in politics, but women in society, given all of these Me Too claims, but generally the fact that, it's every day, it's another harasser and another harasser and another harasser. I don't think that by wearing black, they're going to change Donald Trump's view of anything. I don't think they're going to do anything. I don't think their colleagues are all of a sudden going to say, oh my gosh, this is the most important issue to us. But I do think that it will lead virtually every single reporter who's writing a story about the State of the Union address to mention this. And garnering that kind of national attention is a way to start garnering support for real policy change on an issue like sexual harassment. So, it might seem like it's a little bit of a superficial or symbolic move, but given reporting and given the visuals that will certainly accompany the State of the Union address, it's a pretty cheap, shrewd move, given, that they want to jumpstart this conversation.
Cheap and shrewd, all eyes again down inside the Beltway. So between looking at Friday and a looming shutdown, what else are we looking at in DC in the coming week?
I think the looming shutdown is pretty much going to suck up most of the energy, although I have been amazed that almost on a daily basis, Washington Post reporters continue to reveal more and more about that immigration meeting from last week. So it's possible that, that will continue to garner a little bit more attention if a little new snippet comes out. I should mention, by the way, that my copy of Fire and Fury did finally arrive. I'm about 150 pages in, and I highly recommend the book. I have no idea if it's true, but it's great reading.
You're not done yet.
I've been very busy.
I know you've been busy. Again, not inside the Beltway right now, down at the UVA. American University professor and director of the Women in Politics Institute, Jennifer Lawless. As always, appreciate your taking the time to Skype in.
My pleasure.
Okay, we'll talk next week. Take care. Jennifer Lawless, as we say, we catch her inside the Beltway, slightly outside for academic reasons down at UVA today.